Hi, everyone. Welcome to Week 1 of High School Football America's weekly podcast. This week, 23 states open their seasons, bringing the total number of states now playing the 2010 regular season to 31. The states opening this week: Alabama, Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Idaho, Illinois, Iowa, Michigan, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Mexico, North Dakota, Ohio, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Virginia, West Virginia, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. Now, it's hard to believe, but Alaska actually hits the midway point of its 8-game regular season, with 19 states still waiting to play their first game. On Friday night, High School Football America will be in Rockville, Indiana, for Rockville High's home opener against Covington. The Rocks are a Class 2A school located in western Indiana, about 180 miles due south of Chicago. The side story on Friday night will be the fact that Rockville is situated in the heart of Park County, which is known as the covered bridge capital of the world. There are 31 of these magnificent structures along 5 color-coded routes that total approximately 161 miles of driving. The oldest bridges date back to between 1856 and 1860. Now, time to switch gears and move on to our weekly personality profile. This week I had a chance to talk with award-winning Sports Illustrated writer Tim Layden, who just penned a great book called Blood, Sweat, and Chalk. It examines the origins and evolution of football's different offensive schemes and plays, and it's just a great read to get the fans prepped up for what will be happening week in and week out on the gridiron. It starts with the single wing, and it goes all the way through that crazy A11 offense that has every player as an eligible receiver that was developed by Piedmont High School in California. And for the high school football fans, I'll tell you what, it's chock full of high school football stories. You know, things that you may think came from the pros, but really began at the high school level, like the run-and-shoot offense. So let's begin our conversation with Tim on the origins of his book.
The actual genesis of the idea was, we did a story, or I was assigned a story. Actually, the editor threw the idea out to a bunch of writers, and I bid on it to do a piece in 2007 on the cover 2 defense, which was very popular in the NFL and in college football at the time. And cover 2, Tampa 2 were names that were coming up every weekend when people were watching games. And my editor said, I'm not sure anybody knows what the heck this really is. And so I did a story on it, which explained it as best coaches could explain it to me. But then I also sort of tried to figure out where it came from. Who was running this, and then who did he get it from, and who did he get it from, and kind of trace it back to the beginning, and wrote a 6-page story in the magazine, and it got a real good reader response. People seemed to like it, and it just was a popular story. And from there, actually, an agent contacted me and said, have you ever thought of expanding this into a book? And I said, well, I think we've written about all we can about the cover 2, and he said, well, I mean, where every chapter is an offense or defense, and you do the same thing with other offenses and defenses. And to me, that sounded like a great idea, and it sounded like it would be fun to do. Mm-hmm. I've turned down a lot of books over the years because I thought they would be drudgery. So I decided to give this one a shot.
It seems like you did a lot of talking with high school coaches, because in some ways high school football is sort of like a petri dish, I guess, for some of this, where they've brought things back like the single wing and all those sort of things. So I'm assuming the high school coaches were very excited to hear from you, because they don't get that sort of publicity. They always think it's the geniuses of the world at the top level that are creating things.
Yeah, I mean, I found out in general that the information flows in both directions. Things are invented at the NFL level and trickle down, but things also start at the high school level and work their way up, or are sustained at the high school level. And, the single wing was really the first piece of this that took me back to high schools was the Wildcat, which became very popular at the NFL level in 2007. 2008, actually, and I sort of started asking some questions of people, where did this come from? And Bill Belichick was one of the first people that said to me, it's single wing football. So then I started looking up single wing websites and making some phone calls, and a local coach in my hometown and 2 towns away, both were running some form of single wing, and I wound up talking to Hugh Wyatt out in Washington, and he was in the book, and he was the guy that sort of invented the double wing offense, the sort of the direct snap double wing that he did a bunch of videotapes on, and he had an offense called the Wildcat. So he actually started the Wildcat, and then it trickled upward from there. And although he wasn't getting all the credit he deserved, and that was the first case where I started to understand how much of this. And then, of course, I learned how many teams still run single wing in high school. I went to see a game in Florida where team with it, and it wasn't just teams without talent. This team had tremendous talent, and they were running single wing, and it just, and then you get the wing T, you get a lot of that spread offenses, or a lot of high school coaches, and it was just high school coaches were sprinkled throughout the reporting process and throughout the book.
What's in this book that you think would be helpful to coaches to pick it up and read it and really kind of dive into it?
Well, here's what I think. I don't think I can teach a coach anything about how to do his job. Those guys, even the lowest level high school coach in the country who's, losing 10 games every year, knows more about how to coach football than I do. But what I did with the book is I told the story of these offenses and defenses and how coaches came up with them and how they experimented and how they got desperate and how they got smart. And I think, to me, it would be fun for a coach to read that stuff, especially if he's trying to learn that, it wasn't always genius that did this stuff, that it was in a lot of cases desperation or just experimentation. And to me as a coach, that would be reassuring to see, to see that a guy like Bill Walsh only invented the West Coast offense because his quarterback got injured and he had a guy with a weak arm. Mm-hmm. To me, that's, if you're a coach, if you're a young coach reading that, you can think, gee, these guys aren't necessarily geniuses. Sometimes circumstances just dictated that they try something. And, I think that in their profession, they might, a lot of the feedback I've gotten has been from people who appreciate those kind of stories, coaches included.
Yeah, I think one of the things, and I obviously know this, and as you do when you cover it, but I don't know if the average fan knows how much sharing there is. And I think in this day and age with, economy being what it is and all that, I think it's kind of refreshing that in the coaching fraternity, if you will, there's not a problem with sharing. I mean, that's one of the things that I think really comes out in the book there, that this, like, again, going back, new is old, old is new sort of thing. And I'm sure that was the case that when you were doing these interviews and that, did anybody say, hey, no, we're not going to talk about that?
No, not at all. I mean, and especially with a lot of the single wing guys, because that's been a real strong fraternity of high school coaches for 10 years now. That they have a conclave and they have a seminar every year, and they exchange digital files and post on message boards together. I mean, those guys basically nurse each other through the whole process of learning the single wing and running it. And I just found that. And then when I sat down to talk with these guys, but even at the highest level, not just high school coaches, the NFL and college guys were happy to tell me why they do what they do and how they formed their own. Now, they didn't want to talk about this week's game plan necessarily, right, but in terms of the history of the different offenses and defenses, guys were very forthcoming from NFL all the way down to high school. And certainly the high school guys were thrilled to have a chance to talk about a sport that they love and a job that they love doing.
Okay, and let's wrap up with two questions then. So, did you have one particular offensive set, play, if you will, that you really enjoyed learning about and writing about, as opposed to, the rest there?
My favorite evolution, or my favorite interaction, I guess, was with Miles Davis out in Oregon when I talked to him. And he of course, I thought started the run and shoot offense. But he actually told me a story of having come upon a book by a guy named Tiger Ellison, who was a high school coach in Ohio. And Tiger Ellison was actually the first guy to run a run and shoot. He wrote a book about it called The Run and Shoot, the Now Attack, and or Offense of the Future, I guess, was his first book. And this was 5 years before Mouse, and Mouse copied Tiger, and then everybody copied Mouse, even the people that run it now. So, I mean, to me, that was an offense that actually did start with a high school coach, and now everybody that runs four wideouts at the pro level or the major college level owes a debt of gratitude to Tiger Ellison.
Is there anything new out there, based upon the fact that new is old, old is new? Were there any of these coaches you talked to say, yeah, you know what, there's something that hasn't been found yet. There's an offensive scheme that's still to be found. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, they all would say two things. One is change is going to continue to occur. But number two, it's just they're just tweaking what they already have. Certainly, I didn't hear anyone tell me that there's a brand new scheme other than the A11, that the high school offense that's being run out in California, which I don't know if you're going to see elements of that in the NFL or not. You do see some in college.
Yeah.
There's sort of pieces of offenses and defenses that are being developed now. I mean, I think the NFL is continuing to experiment with more sets involving a quarterback running the ball, which they were resistant to for a long time, but they're clearly doing that more than ever. And, as far as an entire scheme, I mean, the zone blitz, the zone blitz and the spread offense are sort of two of the last ones that we've seen, and I don't know what's next. I guess we'll see it after it starts.
Now, Tim's book can be found at bookstores across the nation. Well, that'll do it for this week's podcast. Join us every Wednesday for high school football stories from around America. If you do have a story idea, please contact me via email at jeff@highschoolfootballamerica.com. I'm Jeff Fisher. Thanks for listening, and why don't you go out and check out a local high school football game. We'll see you next week.